Hi, this is Barry Katz, editor for Unconventional Resources, and today I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about the peer review process, something that I consider the backbone of scientific literature. I'll do this by addressing three questions commonly asked to editors. The first is, what does trust in peer review mean in today's world? Well, I think trust in the process is even more important today than in the past. It's the only way we can have of validating whether the work makes sense technically, whether it has supporting data, whether it has relied on reasonable references, whether it's presented in an understandable fashion. It's the role of the reviewers to ensure that there's scientific foundation and as well as ensuring that a reader will be able to understand the work. As we move forward into this world where anybody can post anything at any time, too often now, bad information is being made available. And for someone who's moving into a field or is looking for something, they have no way to determine whether this is valid or not. The peer review process does that. We don't want anything going out, in my mind, where there's questions about its scientific integrity, and it's quite easily accomplished in today's space. Another question commonly raised is, how can the peer review process be more transparent? Well, a lot of people won't be happy with my response to this, but I think one of the ways that the process can be more transparent is to tell people who is actually reviewing their work. We make it very easy for a reviewer not to, or for the editor for that matter, not to identify the reviewer. And people will be maybe at times more open about comments or more brutal about comments, but at the same time, uh, it raises questions on whether someone has an axe to grind and whether they're really meaning what meaning they put in their work. I think identifying people is one way of doing it. I can say that I have reviewed several thousand papers over my career, and I have never checked the box to keep my name anonymous. I've always been willing to stand behind my thoughts. I think if more people would do that, I think we would feel more comfortable. I think it's also important to tell the authors how many people we've attempted to contact in order to get a review. This is becoming more and more of a problem. There are times that more than 10 or 12 people might be contacted to obtain two good peer reviews. So I think just telling people how we're doing, what the timelines are, and things along those lines, I think would benefit all. And I think the third question that comes up always is, how do we mitigate bias during the peer review process? Well, I think first this falls on the hands of the editor. A good editor will ensure that he's not going out and selecting individuals to review an article that necessarily have either an axe to grind or will immediately support whatever the authors write. There's got to be some method of measuring the integrity of the system, and that I think is important. I think another way to keep the process from entering into too much bias is to go back and ask the authors to tell us who they do not want to have review their paper with a strong explanation as to why. Simply stating there's a conflict may or may not be satisfactory. I don't know what that conflict is. Is it a personal issue? Is it a technical issue? Or I come from two different schools working on the same kind of area. This has come to pass to me that within one of the journals that I have been working with for many years, I was explicitly asked not to ask this other group to review their work. Well, it turns out there were only two groups working in this technical space, which resulted in some rather complicated and awkward ways of handling the review process. And finally, if there are major differences of opinion between the reviewers, you need to go out to get additional reviewers. This may slow the process up, but it also provides for a better understanding of what the validity and questions are that exist within the manuscript. And at the end of the day, it really boils down to the editor sitting down and reading the work and making some conclusion of his own as to whether or her own, as to whether the work is acceptable or not. I hope these comments and thoughts help you with your views on looking at the role of the peer review in today's world. And with that, I'll say thank you and keep those articles coming.